Hello, this is the artist currently known as Fake Zappa. It is September 3rd, 2018, and I've been talking about my life from now back to then. And the last time I recorded it, the camera messed up, I got discouraged, and then I realized that the whole time I was just unfocused and doing my ranting, and I thought that's the last thing I need is somebody else ranting on YouTube. But really, as much as there's been a lot of wonderful experiences living on the road, this is my 6th month doing this, and as rewarding as it is really intense, and I really can't focus on okay, this event happened, and then before that it was this and this and this. I will make reference to some stuff that I won't go into detail quite yet, although I put a little bit of it on some social media stuff. But I'm writing down how I physically reacted to an incident that happened just over 2 weeks ago. And I have not had a response like this where there's prolonged panic attacks and there's just this sequence of different symptoms since I had my my big thing happen in March, which was surviving a house fire, and that's also something too that I'm hoping as I keep doing these videos, I'll go back in time to that event and be able to talk about it, but I'm just not ready yet. And there's a lot of reasons why I haven't been doing these videos again like I have. And it also keeps me more lucid. When I talk about my illness as an illness, it's a lot easier not to get so overwhelmed with it, which is good because that's what happens in crisis. Which is funny because you go to mental health clinics and they give you these little cards like what to do in crisis. Well, the first thing you won't do in crisis is get out a little card and study it, no matter how easy it is. Um, Most people who live with debilitating disorders, a mental health crisis is more about losing control of your mind, losing control of your will. And what people call a crisis could be a lot of other things too, where somebody just loses control emotionally. And that's typically what a lot of people have, especially those that do not live with debilitating disorders. So I'm going to go just through the last 2 weeks of some of the things that I had written down today, so I hope I can focus. And I am currently out in Eastern Oregon. I've been to 3 states in 3 weeks and several places that I've slept at. It's always here in my mobile man cave here, and uh, I don't feel as safe as I want to be, but this is the closest thing I have to home, and I'm really grateful for it. It's not easy sometimes, but I met a guy who's in a similar situation, and he has to live in tents and things, and so I'm really grateful that I have this roof over my head, even though at 6 in the morning I had birds all over my roof for the first time. I've never heard birds, and now I've got this clicking sound going on behind me, and I don't know what it is. It's kind of freaking me out. So I don't know. It just like uh, well, I will get to this list here. It's kind of extensive here. I didn't realize how much I was suffering this last couple of weeks until I put it on paper. But anyways, just started week 3 since the incident, and I'm documenting what had happened to my body and things like that. So the first couple days was kind of a shock and feeling I'm all powerful and I can handle this, which was really similar to how I felt at the fire the first 24, 48 hours or so is like, wow, I can handle this. That's amazing. I had no idea the kind of shock I was in, like almost feeling happy and in denial, this kind of thing. And then also escaping into fantasy or doing some really indulgent creative thing as well. And then the next day or two was hyper digestive system, for lack of better terms, out of control. Um, I almost had an incident at Walmart because of that, and so that was also some. Anyways, and then for like the third, fourth, fifth days or so, I was just jumpy. I was paranoid, and I had all these wonderful opportunities of people just knocking on my door and saying, "Hey, there's a problem," and things like that that had nothing to do with any negative connotation at all. It's like bang, 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 hello, 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 and hey, there's cake and ice cream, and I'm like, I'm freaking out. I'm having this panic attack, and it's like, holy shit, I just could not control my panic responses. And so I would have these outbursts when I was by myself, and they weren't that often, no. And I was glad I was by myself as well. And if I was feeling like I could have an outburst in front of people, I would get away from people and stuff like that. But I've learned to control myself around people for the most part. And then I started having this distrust of everybody, and I was really oversleeping a lot. And then my second week, I was just waking up with panic attacks every day. There was no reason to have a panic attack. I would, you know, have 6 to 8 hours of sleep, which is usually not enough for me, but still, though, I'd wake up and just feeling like something horrible had just happened. And then I had a lowered immune system um, at the end of the first week where I was having like cold and flu symptoms, sore throat, and then my digestive stuff was turning into like shortness of breath, and that's another thing I'm still dealing with right now, and that has to do with a GI tract thing, which I don't know if I want to get into right now, but it's very common in people that live with trauma, or what I call um, extended exposure to unsafe environments. So I also had a lot of tense muscles and a sore neck, but that could have been driving from like Seattle to Boise. But it took me 2 days to do it. But still, though, I was really sore, and a lot of it I think was stress related. And then I had an overly germ conscious thing, which I usually don't get when I'm out in the country. And if I go somewhere where I feel safe, I'm not so obsessed about cleaning my hands. And every time I see a doorknob, my mind is just going out of control, thinking that's unsafe. I have to do this and this and this. And that is usually an indicator of these types of responses that I have. And believe me, self care does not cure these. And that's where people get frustrated with self care. Self care is a really good thing, and you don't want to stop it. It's just that sometimes the body responds in ways where you just got to let it do its thing, and self care definitely helps it not to get worse, and it's preventative care, and that's another good thing, too. So I've had about an average amount of my what I call my self care. Um, for instance, qigong is a big deal for me. Uh, Very helpful for me, but that could be a lot of other things, like even prayer and stuff like that. Okay, so here getting towards the end of week 2, my digestive system was hyper in the other way. It was just slowing down and stopped. Now I also say that I was smoking a lot of weed this last week, and that can slow down people's digestive systems sometimes as well. And so that was definitely a crutch for me and helping me to cope. And luckily, it was legal where I'm at, so I'm not breaking the law doing that. And at the same time, I still have to deal with my shit, even though it kind of postpones my stuff that I'm dealing with. And I don't recommend it for people with a mental illness. It can cause a lot of dissociative stuff or different things, paranoia, according to what kind of cannabis somebody's taking. So I had a lot of physical weakness and exhaustion, just kind of weak in the knees, but not too bad. I mean, considering um, that when I go through these cold and flu type symptoms, usually that's accompanied by a lot of these things. Okay, so I also had some dissociative stuff, these kind of out of body sensations where you feel like you're kind of looking down at yourself. And, um, dissociation and dissociative disorders are pretty common in responding to trauma and healing from trauma. And then just this last weekend, heavy depression, feeling very unmotivated, giving up. And then this is typically when people want to give up on themselves and everything, and there's self harm and there's hopelessness and stuff like that. So I'm really trying to be very careful and that when things go through my head or when things happen in relationships or whatever, I say, okay, is that the depression talking or is that what's really going on? And it's hard, but sometimes I just have to keep reminding myself, okay, that's probably the depression talking, or the depression is like translating it or amplifying the negative or whatever. And I just look at everything, and everything's depressing, and the past and the future is depressing, and the present's depressing. And, everything reminds me of something depressing. It's like, oh fuck, I hate this. And it usually goes away, and if it doesn't, after several months, then I have to make some radical life changes, which is what I was doing last year. And let's see here. So I was getting lack of sleep, and so I've had to kind of up my different sleep aids that I do, and I kind of mix them up, different ones. And so that is my last couple of weeks. And then before that, I seem to have more symptoms when I go back into the Portland area. And it seems like most of the shit that's happened in my life, but I've lived there 30 years of my life, so that's why when life's hard for anybody, going to that place might have a lot of triggers, and so I always feel like I'm not looking forward to doing this and that, but I've got projects I'm doing, and one of the projects I'm doing is I recorded 12 Joni Mitchell songs with my favorite local vocalist, and it's starting out really good, and I'm really excited about it. I just got back into visual art just this last weekend, and I've got this event that I'm doing with my band, and it's one of our private events where we just do it in the style of Live at Pompeii, 1971 by Pink Floyd during what I call their soundtrack period, which is like the kind of vibes I'm trying to get is like the Live at Pompeii kind of a thing. There's no audience, but you got cameras, you got multi-track recording, and you've got a very set visual and audio effect that you're doing for the show, and it's for a film. So I'm excited about that, and I'm nervous because I'm just not prepared. I don't know if I have the tools, and I don't know if I have the mental health to do it and to function in that town. So really trying to encourage myself. But anyways, that is my life backwards, starting from now and going back a little further. And hopefully next time I'll be able to talk more about living on the road, the fire, and then the events that happened before that. It's really surreal, and I just don't know if I'm ready to talk about it, but I should. So hopefully this is getting me out of my shell a little bit, and so I don't disappear from everybody so much. So, yay.